Hi everyone, this is Michael, the appraiser, broker, and investor. And last video, I spoke briefly about how anybody can become wealthy over time by investing in real estate. And in this video, I will speak a little bit about acquiring that first rental property. And I'll briefly explain what it takes and some different things about that process here. Obviously, the first place that you would want to start is to acquire financing, unless you have the capital already, which I guess the vast majority of people would not have the capital unless you have inheritance or something like that. But the main loans that you would be looking at are conventional FHA loans. There are other loan products that ARMs and different type of other loan products, hard money loans. But the vast majority of loans are going to be done conventional or FHA. FHA is something where you would have to own or occupy the property for a set amount of time. I believe that's 1 year. And I believe that somewhere around, if you pay 10% less, you might have to carry mortgage insurance for the entirety of the loan. And if you pay over 10% down, then you might have to pay mortgage insurance for, I think, 11 years, but I'm not sure about that. And again, if I hadn't already mentioned, the FHA loan would require 3.5% down minimum. And the reason why some people would get an FHA loan, and I do have one myself, is because they are lenient on credit score and down payment or debt to income ratio. And I got an FHA loan when I was very young, coming out of high school. And because of those reasons, I had young credit and my debt to income ratio was high. And I wanted to get a condo and I used an FHA loan. But if given the choice, especially with how FHA loans are now, they were a little bit different then I would go conventional, because a conventional loan requires you to only pay 22% of the loan down to get rid of your mortgage insurance. Or of course you can pay 20% at the start of the loan down and not have mortgage insurance, period. And a conventional loan won't be as forgiving generally with credit score or debt to income ratios. So it really pays to want to clean your credit as much as possible, or have the best credit, the best credit you can get, and save up some money down. If you can save up 20% and have an excellent credit score, you're in really good shape. A lot of people won't be able to do that, or are going to have to start differently. In that case, then I would say try to go with a conventional if possible. I think the minimum on a conventional might be 3% down. You can put whatever you'd like above that down. But conventional loan will be much more lenient in mortgage insurance and save you a lot of money later on in the loan when you start to pay the loan down. And you can get rid of the mortgage insurance with a conventional loan, where I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you're limited on an FHA loan. So I think to sum that up, I touched on just what is common, but speaking with a loan originator that you trust and knows your financial situation and your goals is going to be your best bet, because at that point, they can say, hey, look, since you only want to do this and you've got this and this product might work for you, But I think the majority of people would go with some conventional or FHA loan. The next thing is once you have financing, the next thing would be to acquire a property and, selecting a property. And that process is, for me, only two things really. Is the property rentable? Would I see myself living there as a tenant? And you can picture yourself as an ideal tenant, maybe picture yourself as a single mom, so you want these amenities for the property. You want maybe safety and a little park close by, this and that. Or you can say, hey, look, I've got this property. As long as you identify that the property would be in demand to rent and it's going to be comfortable for a tenant. I think that's the first step. And then the second step, and this is just as important, if not more important, and it goes hand in hand with the first step, is what is the net income of the property? And how is that property going to, what I would call cash flow, meaning that all the expenses and the operating cost, and even for me, the mortgage, does the rent cover that, right? So when you look at that, you have to calculate two things, which is what is your monthly rent, and the second thing obviously is what is your operating costs, your expenses. And so monthly rent can be easy to calculate and get a rough idea of what you would get. We've all been apartment shopping. We all have looked at rents. And if you've got 2, 3 rentals on the market for an 800 square foot apartment, you can guess that your condo would probably rent out for what they are renting out roughly. And you could get maybe one's renting out for $2,000, the other $2,300, and the other one $2,200, and maybe you go in the middle and go $2,200 and say, okay, that's about it. Or maybe mine has this amenity this doesn't have, so maybe bump it up a little bit. But you can get a really good idea of what your property rent for just by checking the market. If you want to get numbers that are probably a little bit more accurate, you could hire an appraiser or a broker. A broker might do a market analysis for you, an appraiser might do a rent schedule. And I don't think that's necessary. I think that just looking at the market and putting yourself in a tenant's shoes and looking at comparable properties will give you a good enough idea of what you can use, a good enough idea of what the rent is, and you can use that rent as your figure to estimate cash flow on the property. The second part of this is a little bit more difficult. It's it's estimating the expenses of a property, and many people do. I mean, people do this in a number of different ways, and I'll just show you one that is commonly used in the appraisal field is what they call Fannie Mae Form 216, and you don't need this form to estimate expenses, but it can be helpful. You can do this just as well on an Excel sheet, and I know some people that really kind of do it in their head, and they kind of don't really. They've got rough figures in their head and they just go for it. But I like to have mine down on paper, and it helps. But it's something that if you've got something that you're getting a lot of income and you can see that there's not a lot of expenses, maybe you don't have to go through this whole thing of itemizing out your expenses. But it's really a good thing to do, and it will give you an idea of what to expect. Here, if we look at this operating income statement that I have here, it's I'm just using numbers. These aren't going to be anything that is going to be accurate in today's market or whatnot. I just put some figures in here, and basically this form is going to tell you that you're looking at monthly rents of about $5,000 for this particular duplex. And the tenant is going to pay electricity, gas, water, sewer, included in that figure. And you come down here and you're going to estimate that there's a 3% vacancy. And what that means is that your property will experience vacancy about 3% of the time, and that is estimated at that calculates to $1,800. And you estimate your casual labor, interior paint and decorating, general repairs and maintenance. You can estimate management expenses, or you can manage the property yourself. In this case, I just put roughly 10% management expenses there. Supplies, and this is just something from the second page of this form. But these are just general expenses here that you estimate. Here is replacement of equipment, property equipment. They've got stoves, refrigerators, dishwashers, AC units, washer and dryers, hot water heaters, furnace, carpeting, roof. And the way this works here is that you say, hey, I've got, and this is out of date, obviously, it doesn't cost that, but I've got a range here that costs $400, and I've got a duplex that, so I need two of them, and the one that is current there is going to last me about probably 16 more years. That's probably a generous estimate, but let's just say that. And so this particular form, my software calculates this for me, but you could easily do this. It's basically saying for 16 years, this would be 800 because it's times 2. And then you would need $50 per year for 16 years to replace those stove ranges over time. And you do that for each piece of equipment in the house. Some houses won't have AC units. Some houses may not even have furnaces. They may have heat pumps. So you can do that for the equipment that the house you're buying or the equipment you plan to put in the house, and calculate the equipment replacement costs and the life of the current equipment in the property. And the second thing is here is just calculating your effective gross income minus your calculated operating expenses, giving you the operating income, dividing it by 12, and giving you the monthly operating income. And this one equaled out to $4,082. In addition to this, I like to add the mortgage payment in there to make sure that I'm not negative in between my expenses and mortgage payment. If you can do that, if you can cover the mortgage and your expenses for the property, you're doing really well. And I would say anything that does that in a profit, and you identify that it's a quality rental property, it's not going to give you a lot of hassle, it's going to be semi-passive, that type of thing, then I would advise to move ahead with it. I think that's a good purchase. Go ahead. In a lot of markets, it's hard to find that, especially as property values are increasing. I believe that property values currently in some markets are declining, or will begin to, due to the high interest rates, and you might be able to snag a deal at that time and get something that does cash flow. And you might even in an up market, you might be able to find a couple of deals and get some cash flow. And even if it's a little bit negative, it still might be a good investment for you. It all depends on the utility of the property, the ease of maintenance, this and that. A lot of condos are really easy to maintain because you don't have to deal with a lot of maintenance. But you've got to watch out for special assessments and different things like that. So condos are a little bit different. We can talk about that in another video. So after you have calculated your expenses and your mortgage payment, you would then minus that from the rental income, and that would give you your cash flow. I'll show you quickly here how to calculate a mortgage payment. It's easy to do. I generally use a website called mortgagecalculator.org. There's so many mortgage calculators out there, and they all do the same thing, really. On this property, or on this particular example, you can just say, hey, look, I'm going to buy, you don't need a down payment or value, just whatever your loan amount is, you know, just say, hey, look, I'm taking a loan for $400,000 here at 6% for 30 years. And then I want to calculate that, and that will give you your monthly payment. That's as simple as that. The other things that you calculate in there, and you would use this acronym as easy to remember, is PITI or PITI. Payment, interest, taxes, and insurance. And the payment is this. Okay, the interest is also calculated in this payment. So it'd be this is your interest, but it's in mortgage calculators, they calculate the payment and interest. So you've already got that covered. The second largest would be the taxes. The taxes, you can estimate them on these calculators, but I would suggest going to the county records and getting the actual taxable amount currently on the property. And they would show that in increments of usually 6 months. They can show a year. And you would, if it's 6 months, you just divide it by 6. And if it's a year, you'd divide by 12. And that would give you your monthly taxes. Let's say in this instance, it might be $300. And we add that onto there, and you're already really close to where you need, because insurance is generally the least cost, and it's not negligible, but you'd have to call insurance companies and see what they would insure that property for. But it's not a huge cost. And if you don't leave it in there, it's not the end of the world, or you estimate it, it's not the end of the world. That's the only one that I really would estimate, because it's not a huge expense. The taxes and the payment would be much more important. And so that is it for today, and I hope that you learned something. I will continue to try to bring more videos on this particular topic, investing. I'll branch off to different videos that are a little bit more in depth or a little bit more niche. Right now I'm focusing just on the basics of investing, and then we will get into other things later on. And I hope that anybody out there was able to get something out of this. And if you did, please like, subscribe, and use these tools to develop wealth, you know. And if you do get something, let me know by commenting a thanks or a like and a subscribe. And those will be great for me, because I'll see that I'm actually helping people out there. Everybody out there, have a good day, and see you next time.